17 people, 3 people remaining, and we'll start. Sarah, how about now? Can you hear me? Is Sarah around? So we have waited almost 10 minutes for everybody to join, so I think it's good if we start now. Are any of your friends having issues to join? Maybe I can wait for 2 minutes. If there is anyone who's having a trouble to join, maybe I can wait for 2 minutes. You can unmute yourself and speak, or you can write me in the chat box. Otherwise, we can start. Okay, anyone? Okay. I think it's good if we start now. So last time, yes, Mikias? Oh, Kia. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll put it in the chat box here. Just a second. Oh, Ruhama, thank you. Ruhama have sent the link in the chat box, so Kia, you can use that.
Okay, thanks.
My pleasure. Okay, great. Now we're 21, so we can start today's class. Thank you everyone for joining in. As you remember, we have been seeing the nature and definition of human rights, the classification of human rights, and yet again, the fact that they are indivisible despite any kind of academic classification. So today we will proceed to chapter 2, which is universal and regional human rights protections. We will see the normative and institutional frameworks within the universal system of human rights and within the regional systems of human rights. So by regional systems, we mean the African system, the European system, the inter-American system. So these are region-specific human rights systems. There is the normative framework, which is the legal framework, of course, and there is the institutional framework, which enforces the normative legal framework. So before the regional human rights systems, we will first see the universal human rights systems. So I am continuing the class, assuming that everyone listens to me. If anyone have issues listening to me, you may tell me in the chat box, or you may unmute yourself and speak. So everyone can hear me, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. Okay, great. So, as you all know, human rights is one branch of public international law, and it deals with the protection of individual freedoms and individual rights. And human rights discusses the norms, institutions that are established to enforce these norms and procedures, and those institutions that enforce the legal norms. So at the global level, as I have said, we have the universal protection of human rights. There is the legal framework, and there is also the institutional framework, which enforces the latter. So there are two major human rights regimes globally at the universal level, and these are the charter-based system and the treaty-based system. So the charter-based system is a system which basically relies on the UN Charter, the United Nations Human Rights Charter. So the treaty-based system, on the other hand, is a system which is built upon the 9 treaties that we have been seeing. So we've seen that there are 9 major human rights treaties. We said so because these are the treaties that have institutional framework. I mean, when we say human rights treaties, there are many human rights treaties, more than 40 human rights treaties actually. But when we say only 9 of those are the major treaties, we mean that those 9 are the ones that have the institutional framework to implement the treaties. So it's on this ground that we are saying the 9 treaties are majors, and the other treaties are, in a way, because they don't have an enforcement mechanism, they are not major treaties. So seeing this, we can now go into the details of how each of these human rights systems work out. Let me share for you a screen here so that it will be more clear for you. So there are the substantive human rights, and those substantive human rights, as you know, to be meaningful, need to have enforcement mechanisms. And universally, we have 2 enforcement mechanisms, as I have said earlier. The first one is the treaty-based mechanism, and the second is the charter-based mechanism. So the treaty-based mechanism is a way to enforce the 9 major treaties. Each treaty have its own treaty body, and these treaty bodies ensure the implementation of each and every one of the 9 treaties. And the charter-based mechanism is a human rights enforcement mechanism whereby the UN Charter is to be implemented using the different organs of the UN. So today we will be seeing the treaty-based mechanism, and we will see the sub-procedures within the treaty-based mechanism and how each one of those help to protect and promote human rights. So as you know, human rights norms just written in the laws in the paper are meaningless unless they are practically enforced, unless they are practically implemented. So we will see the procedures and the mechanisms in which those treaties are implemented. ስለዚህ ትሪቲ ቤዝድ መካኒዝም ስንል ሌላ እንቆቅልሽ የለውም። ምንድን ነው እነዛ ትሪቲዎች እንዴት ነው በተግባር አፕላይ የሚደረጉት? በምን መንገድ ነው ትሪቲዎቹ ላይ there's a right to life, there's a right to food, there's a right to housing. There are many rights and freedoms and liberties stated in the treaties, but how actually are this going to be implemented? How are they going to, be meaningful? እንዴት ነው አንድ ኢንዲቪዥዋል የሆነ ሰው እንዴት ነው መብቱን ሊጠቀም የሚችለው ስንል በናሽናል ሲስተምም እንደምናውቀው ህግ አለ፣ ከዛ ኢንስቲትዩሽን አለ። ስለዚህ የምናየው በዚህ ሴክሽን የሚሆነው የትሪቲ ቤዝድ ሜካኒዝምን ኢንፎርስ የሚደረግበትን መንገዶች ነው ማለት ነው። So there are 4 sub procedures in which the treaty based mechanism is implemented. So the first one is, as you can see here, the first mechanism whereby treaties compliance is ensured is by periodic state reports. So using periodic state reports, we can gauge whether states are actually complying with the human rights treaty they signed. Human rights treaty ፈርመው ስቴቶች ዝም ብለው የፈረሙትን ሼልፍ ውስጥ አስቀምጠውት ዝም ብለው አቧራ እያስጠጡት ነው ወይስ are they actually implementing the treaty for their citizens የሚለውን we are going to gauge that using state reporting. So as we shall see in detail in today's session, we will see how states actually report to the human rights bodies, to the treaty bodies, their compliance with the treaties. And the second mechanism by which we ensure the implementation of a treaty is interstate compliance. And the third one is individual compliant procedure. And the fourth one, as you can see, is using inquiries and country visits. So today's session, we will try to see the first 2. And in our next session, we will try to see the third and the fourth mechanism whereby treaties help us enforce human rights of individual persons. So as a brainstorming question, what do you think is state reporting? How do you think state reporting helps ensure the compliance with human rights obligations? You can unmute yourself, you can unmute your mics, and we can discuss. Just a brainstorming question. Okay, yeah. So state reporting is a mechanism where the state reports back to the treaty body how it has been implementing the specific human rights treaty. So states usually, after they sign a treaty, they will have to write an initial report. The initial report, depending on the type of treaty, differs. I mean, the time to report will differ based on the type of treaty. Some treaties, such as the ICCPR and the CRC, the Child Rights Convention, would allow for 5 years period to provide the initial report, while other treaties, such as the CERD, the Convention on Elimination of Racial Discrimination, allows only 2 years for the initial report. So after a state signs the CERD, it needs to provide an initial report on the implementation of that specific treaty to the human rights body of the CERD. There's a treaty body for each treaty. Like, for example, we have a responsible agency for national laws, which oversees the implementation, which oversees their appropriate implementation. In the same way, in the international arena, there are treaty bodies, and these specific treaty bodies will oversee whether states are implementing the human rights treaties that they have signed. And all of these treaty bodies are mandated to receive and consider reports submitted periodically by states, as we have said. So these treaty bodies will issue guidelines to assist states while they're preparing their reports for these treaty bodies. So it's important to take into consideration the fact that it's necessary to make accountable states not only for the people within their own jurisdiction, but also to the international community regarding the implementation of the provisions they signed, because human rights are applicable internationally and universally. Accountability should also go in line with this. Hildana is saying that you're breaking up. Can you hear me now, Hildana? I thought you were listening to me. Okay. Okay. Okay, it's just now that I have seen it. Okay, great. So I was discussing that it's important, to make states accountable internationally for their human rights obligations. And so states reporting is a tool that will help international accountability. So state parties under existing human rights treaties would report periodically, and this would, as I said, would differ from treaty to treaty. So what are the objectives of state reporting? Now let's see that. Why would, you require states to report? Why is it important? So it's important because first, it will allow the states to, comprehensively review their own national legislations. So it's, it's a mechanism to allow a state to look, inwardly into itself, and, to ensure that it conforms to the terms of the treaty. Also, state reporting has an objective of monitoring the actual human rights situation within national territories. Also, we can see that state reporting will help to scrutinize government policies. It will help us, evaluate the progress that a certain state has made toward the realization and enjoyment of human rights. So this will help states, to develop a better understanding of the difficulties they encounter, and, to provide solutions thereof. And also, when states report, it will help them, to learn from each other. The exchange of information among states would help, experience sharing between them, and this would, increase the overall realization of human rights internationally. So state reporting is not only important for that specific state to improve its human rights situation, but also for the international community as a whole, because it will facilitate exchange of information and experience sharing. So if we have, looked into these objectives of the state reporting, now we can discuss on the how state reporting actually is implemented and how it works, and what are the form of the report, what is the content of the report. So we can see such things now. And if you have questions, you can just write me in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask questions at any time. Maybe if I am, kind of, rushing in, maybe if I'm speaking fast, you can also, tell me in the chat box. Because this is an online class, it's good, if it goes in your terms and convenience. So please let me know if you want me to know anything. Okay, so coming to the contents of the report, the state report, each treaty body. Okay, who wants to speak? Okay, I thought someone has a question. Oh yeah, so if not, we can continue to the contents of the report. So each of the treaty bodies under the 9 treaties will issue a reporting guideline, because states, for states to have an effective reporting, they would need to have a guideline in the first place. So the treaty bodies will issue guidelines on how to write the state reports. Some of the treaty bodies expect reports to follow the order of the convention, like, article by article. So, for example, if we take the CEDAW, a state which reports to the CEDAW treaty body will have to report its human right implementation on each and individual of the articles of the CEDAW. So for Article 1, my country have done this and that. For Article 2, we have done this and that. So they're going to report their human right activities article by article. But for some of the other treaties, they allow states to report on similar issues together. So states can bundle up similar issues and they can report on those specific issues together. So it depends on the treaty body, and these guidelines will be specifically given by the treaty body for the reporting state. So following the entry into force of a specific convention, a state party has to submit an initial report. So I was talking about this earlier. So there's a fixed time period. Normally it's 1 until 2 years, but depending on the treaty, it may even increase. But initial report is the first report that a state party to a convention will submit to the committee. And this initial report usually consists the background of the country. By background, it's not economic or other background, but the legal background of the country, the human rights situation of the country before it ratified, it signed the treaty. So the initial report must be comprehensive, and it must give the members of the treaty body an in-depth understanding of the situation in that specific country regarding the particular area covered by that convention. So after the initial report, the state party will need to submit periodic reports. The periodic reports, their frequency will be determined by the convention, the treaty itself may state that a state need to report within this period, or the treaty body may give guidelines and specific requirements. So I think I was off for some minutes. Yeah, so we were talking about the initial report, and then after the initial report, that a state party needs to submit a periodic report within the frequency determined by that specific convention, and this varies from treaty to treaties. So when it comes to the content of the report, obviously the quality of the reports submitted by states, will highly vary, because some states would take the time to write the report, while others may take it lightly. Some of the reports may be reliable, and they may reflect serious efforts by the state to comply with reporting requirements, while others may lack the credibility. So in any case, the reports generally reflect the view of that respective state, but in order to have a credible and reliable report, in addition to the government report, the treaty bodies receive information on the country's human rights situation, not only from that government concerned, but also from other sources. By other sources, we mean non-governmental organizations, UN agencies, academic institutions, or the press. So in an increasing number of countries these days, NGOs prepare and submit to the treaty bodies alternative reports. These reports by NGOs are called shadow reports. These shadow reports are aimed to counterbalance information submitted by the state, because we can't always trust the state, because the state might write its report in a way to defend its own interests, but NGOs in a way may try to balance this pressure and defending tendency from the government. So the quality of decision making throughout the reporting procedure will depend to a great extent on this additional information that experts may receive from external sources. Additional information particularly would be important, as I said, from United Nations and other NGOs, because their perspective might actually reflect the actual situation in the country. They might be in a way down to earth than the state, which might have an interest to defend itself or cover up human rights violations. So finally, the report by the state will be analyzed by the relevant treaty body, and the treaty body will comment on the report, and it will usually request the state concerned to furnish more information. And in order to do these things easily, the committees and the treaty bodies will prepare a list of issues and questions for the state party. So this list of issues and questions will be given to the state party in advance before the formal examination. So on the formal examination, the state party will come up with an answers for those questions and list of issues raised by the committee. And at the same time, the state party must also take note of the issues, and it should raise them and address them very well at the formal examination. So some of the committees, like for example, we can take the CEDAW committee. By the way, these treaty bodies are also called committees. You need to take note of that. Most of the treaty bodies, they have a committee established to see the state reports or individual complaints by individuals. So the second name of treaty bodies is a committee. So the committee on CEDAW, for example, the committee on the Child Rights Convention, the committee on the right of migrant workers, these three committees require state parties to submit written responses to the list of issues prior to the examination. So the examination, is a kind of a court-like examination, you can see. So the state who have submitted its report will present its report, or its report will be examined by the concerned committee. But other committees, will not formally require states to write replies, even when that is not required. So depending on the committee, there are various ways to make states accountable. Like there is no, uniform way of making states accountable, and it will depend from committee to committee. But the end goal of all the treaty bodies is to ensure the accountability of states using state reporting. So some of the committees would send follow-up questions to the state, and the state will need to write a formal reply, but other committees do not require a formal written reply. States might only just send their report and be there for the day of the examination of the report. So the treaty bodies, in light of the information that's available from state and from NGOs, they will examine the reports, and the government representatives will explain the report to the treaty bodies. And this examination by the treaty bodies usually takes place in Geneva or New York. Because, as you know, Geneva and New York are the places where most UN agencies are located, and New York is the headquarters of the UN. So government representatives, usually from Foreign Affairs Ministry or from the Attorney General, would go to Geneva or New York, and they will explain to the experts of the committee their reports. So these reporting procedures are different under different treaty mechanisms. They are meant to facilitate and initiate a constructive dialogue between the treaty supervisory body and the state party. So it's not, somehow judgmental, but it's a kind of constructive dialogue between the treaty body and the state concerned, because states are usually, defending their various interests. The treaty body, gives states, a room, to explain. It's not, a judgmental atmosphere, and it's kind of a dialogue between the experts within the committee, within the treaty bodies, and the states concerned. So there is no blaming or shaming, but rather the committee tries to offer assistance to the state party on how it can improve the implementation of the convention concerned. So usually this is conducted in public, and one state may suggest another state how it can improve the human rights situation in its own country. So it's a constructive dialogue, it's face-to-face, so state parties would, through their delegation, explain the specific human rights situation that's going on in their countries. So finally, based on the dialogue, the state report and other sources of information from NGOs, the shadow report ማለት ነው. After taking into consideration these three things, the experts from the committee will elaborate a set of concluding observations and recommendations to the state party. So it's not a binding decision. The experts will recommend the state party to improve particular, human rights concerns within that country. And after this whole process ends, the outcome of the report will be a concluding observation, and it's adopted by the committee. This concluding observation usually contains three parts. The first one is a positive development during the reporting period. So in this part, the human rights developments achieved by state parties are discussed, and after discussing the developments, the committee will come to the issues of concern. So here you can see how delicately they handle issues. After praising the achievements of the state, they come to the issues of concern. The issues of concern is a part of the concluding observation where violations of human rights are discussed. And after discussing these violations, the committee will give recommendations on how to avert these specific human rights violations. And after the recommendation, the state parties would take that recommendation home, and they will, find solutions to address the issue of concern based on that recommendation by the treaty body, by the committee. So the state reporting is mainly conducted in such a manner. It's a constructive dialogue, it's an open discussion, and the treaty body will mainly consider the state report and also the reports by NGOs, UN agencies, and other sources, so as to counterbalance the information that it receives. Only exceptionally, there is a procedure called a review procedure, and through this review procedure, the committees, the treaty bodies, may look into a state's human rights situation, even though the state has not submitted a report. So states, for various reasons, may not submit a report, even though they are signatories of a specific treaty. So in such situations, the committee or the treaty bodies might look into the human rights situation of the state party, even though if it has not received any state report. So in such cases, the committee, may formulate a list of issues and questions for the state party, and then the state party is expected to invite its delegation and to attend a session organized by the treaty body to explain the human rights situation within its territory. So in the same way, the committee might also get information from the NGOs and UN agencies about the state party. But usually when the treaty body says that it's going to look into a state's human rights situation, even though it has not sent a report, states, will be in a certain kind of shock, and they will present a report because, they'll kind of be asking, why is the treaty body asking me, to look into my country's human rights situation, even though I have not submitted a report. So states would, in a way, use the report to defend themselves, and they will send reports nonetheless, and the committee will look into those reports. So let's see the importance of a follow-up to treaty body recommendations. These recommendations, have no... Yes, please. Who's speaking? Yeah. Oh yeah, so this depends on the treaty. So once you are part of a convention, you have a duty to report, but states for various reasons may not report as they are required. Usually most states, are reluctant to report. When we see the practice, this is something in the treaties, it's one way to enforce human rights, but in actuality, many states do not report, or they may not report periodically or in the manner that is suggested by the specific treaties. So in such cases, the treaty bodies, would lobby the states to report. Like, there is no certain, binding way of enforcing or, pressuring states to report, but various, diplomatic, pressures may be exerted on the state to report. But generally, states would report to the committees because they want their international good name. Because when they are not reporting, it's seen as something that they're not living up to their human rights duties and their human rights responsibilities. So this would in a way tarnish their good name. So in fear of their good will and for the sake of diplomacy, they usually report, but there are some defaulting states, and this is how things are standing now. Okay, so we were discussing on the importance of the recommendation by the treaty bodies. So as you all know, the international system of human rights and generally international law is criticized because it's not, having enforcement mechanisms, or at least the enforcement mechanisms are seen as, very weak. And it's even called a toothless system, a system, with no strong enforcement mechanisms. But yet, there are still improvements within this system. Even the recommendations by treaty bodies are in a way taken seriously by states when they are issuing policies, when they are issuing laws, when they are conducting domestic legal reforms. The weight of recommendations by treaty bodies are very important. For example, if we see the CEDAW, the Committee on the CEDAW, the treaty body of the CEDAW, issues various recommendations. These recommendations have helped to improve women's rights worldwide. countries would use the recommendations from this treaty body to improve the situation of human rights in their countries, to improve laws that repress women's rights, and also to issue various policies and guidelines on the right of women. In the same way, all the other conventions on their specific areas highly influence lawmaking and policy making of countries in the world. So the recommendations, even though they are not binding, have a very highly influential role. We can say that they are influential. So NGOs and national human rights institutions also play a role to ensure that the implementation of the recommendation of the treaty bodies is adhered to. So various NGOs would exert pressure on the government to apply the recommendations that it has received from the treaty bodies. There are various advocacy groups, human rights lobbying institutions, and grassroots level non-governmental organizations, and these organizations would advocate for human rights. They engage in activism, and one part of their activism is pushing states into adhering their human rights obligations, which includes accepting and incorporating the recommendations of the specific treaty bodies. So I think this is clear. State reporting is clear. First, the state will submit an initial report. When it signs a treaty, the initial report would give an in-depth knowledge for the treaty body to understand the human rights situation of the country. After the initial report, the state will provide periodical reports to the concerned human rights treaty body, and then the treaty, in addition to the state, will receive reports from non-governmental organizations, UN agencies, and other sources. And after receiving both reports, the treaty body will examine the state report, and the state representative, which is usually from the Attorney General or from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, will go to the treaty body and would explain the report. After looking into the report, the treaty body will issue a concluding observation, and within the concluding observation there will be the achievements of that specific states and the things that need to be improved, and finally the state, the treaty body will issue a recommendation for that specific country within its concluding observation. State reportings are usually heard between states, and this will also help them, to gain experience from each other. One state can learn from the success of another state, and that other state can also learn from the failures of the second state. So it will be a learning experience between both states. The reporting period, as I said, might differ from convention to convention, but generally it's from 2 years until 5 years. So within each and every 2 years, a state needs to present its report to the treaty body, and maximum it's 5 years. So this depends from treaty to treaty. So you may see the reporting period of each and every one of the treaties. Let me share this with you. So as you see, this depends from state to state. The minimum is 2 years and the maximum for each state is 5 years. So this is the CERD, the ICESR, the ICCPR. So as I said earlier, first we have an initial report and then we have a periodic report. The initial report is submitted just immediately after a state signs a treaty, and the periodic report is submitted after the state have submitted its initial report. Yeah, so for CERD it's 2 years, for ICESR it's 5 years, for ICCPR it's 4 years. So every 4 years a state needs to submit a report for the ICCPR treaty body. The treaty body of ICCPR is the Human Rights Committee. We will see about that in detail in our coming sessions. We will see the treaty bodies of each of these 9 human rights treaties. We will see their functions, how they're organized, and how they help the enforcement of human rights. Yeah, so for the CATS, for the CEDAW, it's 4 years. For CRC, for Migrant Workers Convention, it's 5 years. Yeah, so these are the optional protocols of CRC. Optional protocols ልክ እንደ በናሽናል ጁሪስዲክሽን አዋጅ ወጥቶ ከዛ በኋላ ዳይሬክቲቭ እንደሚወጣው አይነት ነው ማለት ነው የሚሆነው። ኦፕሽናል ፕሮቶኮል ስንል ልክ እንደዛ ማለት ነው። ልክ እንደ ዳይሬክቲቭ ልትሏቸው ትችላላችሁ። በናሽናል ጁሪስዲክሽን ውስጥ ፕሮክላሜሽን አለ፣ ከዛ ዳይሬክቲቭ አለ። በኢንተርናሽናል ሲስተም ደግሞ ኮንቬንሽኑ አለ፣ ዋናው ትሪቲ። ከዛ ኦፕሽናል ፕሮቶኮሉ ደግሞ is just like a directive ማለት ነው። እና it's an optional protocol which is there to actually implement the main treaty. Yeah, so ይሄንን ይመስላል። So if there are questions on state reporting, if there is something that is not clear on state reporting, I can clarify on that. Is state reporting clear? Anyone who can summarize for us what state reporting is? Okay. Okay, so if state reporting is clear, we may proceed to the second mechanism of protecting human rights, which is interstate complaint. As we have seen initially, there are 4 mechanisms in which human rights envisaged in treaties might be implemented. So the first one, we have discussed it already, it's state reporting. And the second one is interstate complaint procedure. So anybody who can, just give us initial ideas on what interstate complaint procedure is. I mean, we have not discussed this in any of our sessions, but if you just have some prior ideas. Yes, please proceed. Yes, Ruhama, please proceed. I think I am losing my connection. Yeah, so I noticed that when I try to share my screen with you guys, the connection will be lost. So yeah, this is a learning process, and we're all learning throughout this. Yeah, so Ruhama, you were going to tell us how the interstate compliant mechanism works. You may proceed. Yeah, exactly. So, as its name indicates, interstate complaint procedure is a mechanism where state parties will initiate a procedure against another state party to that convention. So that state party, is considered to be defaulting on its human right obligations under the specific instrument. So to consider interstate complaints is optional, like it's not something necessary. This means that when states ratify the concerning covenant, they are required to make declaration. They declare whether they accept the competence of the human rights treaty body to examine interstate complaints. So they can opt out this procedure, like they can say, I don't want to be subject to interstate complaint when they enter a certain convention. But if they have not done so, the state would be subject to an interstate complaint, and another state may refer cases of human rights violation within that country. So in most cases, such complaints, may only be submitted if both the claimant and the defendant state have recognized the competence of the supervisory body to allow this type of complaints. So the accusing state is the source of information. The burden of proof would lie on the accusing state, and both the accused and the accuser's state, as I said earlier, should accept the mandate of the treaty body. So in practice, interstate complaint mechanisms are seldom used. They are not widely used. Why do you think is the interstate complaint less used? What might be the reason behind that states are afraid to use interstate complaint? What do you think is the reason behind this? It's not much used in the international system. Like, it's one way to enforce human rights, and it's in a way easy to do that because the burden of proof would lie on the state who is asserting that there is a human rights violation in another country. But then again, most states, won't do this. They won't complain against another state's human rights violation. What do you think is the reason behind this? Yes, please continue. Exactly. States are, very concerned about their diplomatic relationship with other states. Because of this, they're afraid of, illicit reprisals from another state. Because if they complain about the human rights situation in another state, that state in another time may, in a way, reprise the complaining state in another ways, in another unforeseen ways. States do their best always to preserve their diplomatic relations, and mostly they don't do interstate complaints. But yet again, the developing countries in a way make complaints on developing countries' human rights situation, maybe because of economic differences, and maybe they're not afraid of reprisals from developing countries. I'm not saying that human rights violations must not be reported, but the state of the situation is that states are not afraid of reprisals from developing countries, and they tend to easily submit an interstate complaint against less developed nations. Most of the human rights treaties provide for interstate complaint procedure, but to your surprise, it has never, been used very well until today. It's only in some instances that it is actually used, and the main reason is because, as we said, is foreign relations. We can look into the ICCPR, for example. The ICCPR under Article 41 provides for an interstate complaint. It gives us the possibility to lodge complaints. Article 21 of the CAT of the Convention Against Torture provides interstate complaint. Article 11 of the CERD Convention on Elimination of Racial Discrimination provides for interstate complaint, and also Article 33 of the European Charter on Human Rights, Article 45 of the African Convention on Human and People's Rights, and Article 54 of the American Convention also provides for interstate complaint, but they are not widely used. It's only the CERD, the Convention on Elimination of Racial Discrimination, that provides for a mandatory interstate complaint procedure, but this even is not widely implemented. So from this, you can see that the international human rights regime has a lot of things to be criticized. For one thing, it does not stand on binding legal rules, and for the second, it's highly affected by international politics and international foreign relations, and its implementation is highly affected by these two, and this really makes it difficult for human rights abuses to come to the light. In our next class, we will see individual complaint mechanisms and inquiries and country visits. I would say out of the 4 human rights treaties enforcement mechanisms, the last 2, which we will be seeing in the next class, are more, enforceable than state reports and interstate complaints, because states might not report, may default the reporting, or they may not report on time. Also, as we said now, interstate complaints may not work very well because states are afraid of each other due to foreign relations and diplomacy. But the other 2 remaining mechanisms, as we shall see later, in a way kind of look to be more enforceable than the two that we have been seeing. So I think for today's online class, this should be enough, and it's a good test, you know, to see that how many students can attend and how many can't. So just for statistical purposes, I will take attendance today, and this would end today's class. Okay, so is Abel here? Abel Gisela? Okay. Abel is not here. Alenta is here. You may say yes, unmuting your mics. Alenta was here. I have seen him, but he's now out. Okay. Asnaka? Asnaka is not here. Asafa? Okay. Asafa is here with us. Brooktite? Okay. Edom Gannat? Isra? Isra is not here. Ermias? Yadder? Fikri? Okay. Haile Jesus? Okay. Heldana? Heran? Hewan? Hodan? Hunyiling? Is Hunyiling part of this batch? She is? Okay. Is this one of the extra classes? Is Rihanna here? So Howie was here, right? Jami, Kawati, Kia, Maudet, Okay, Mulata, with whom? Who said he's here? Okay. Nahum, Nura? Nura? Okay, Radiant? Rihanna? Ruhama? Saba? Sara? Sara? Saron? Samuel? Samir? Sorati? Tagging? Tawalda Birhan? Yirgalem? Yitzhak? Yitzhak was here. Jonas? Yosef? Enter seat. Okay, almost half of the class can make it. Okay, so do you have any questions on state reporting and interstate complaint mechanisms? Yeah, like this is possible if there the burden of proof still relies on the state which complains back. This is possible, but you know, the aim of the international human rights protection regime is not to complain against each other in reprisals. But this is possible if there are actual grounds to do so. But it should not be a method to reprise back or in a way, right the wrong that is existing in a certain country just because you filed a complaint back against that state won't absolve the human rights violations in your state. Okay. If you have other questions, you're welcome to ask. So, are the two mechanisms under the treaty-based mechanism clear? Okay, so we will see the remaining two human rights protection mechanisms under the treaty-based system in our Monday's class. So today was just a tasting session for how the online class works. So on Monday, we will use the whole time for the session. We will have a 2 hours class. So be ready to have a good internet connection for Monday morning. I'll send you an invitation to the class, and we will have our class in normal class hours. In the morning, notes in the afternoon as last time. So Monday 8:30, let's e-meet and have a good time until then. Okay, goodbye class.